Welcome to F+L Webcast. My name is Vicky Denton, and I'm your host. Our guest today is Dr. Schlecht. Mathias is the president and CEO of ColdStream Energy. Welcome to F+L Webcast, Mathias.
Thank you, Vicky. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You're welcome. So you're based in Houston.
Yes.
All we know about ColdStream Energy is that you deal with natural gas. So tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yes, the company is around since around 2012, but we started to develop a new product starting in 2020. And that was really driven by the fact that compressor stations that use natural gas are a lot of time fueled by the rich gas that is a byproduct of oil and gas, of the oil production in the US. And that gas needs to be moved as effectively and efficiently as possible. Burning rich gas in compressors means you destroy a lot of value, as that rich gas includes heavy hydrocarbons like propane, butane, hexane, which are raw materials for plastics, for the propane you might use at your house or in other locations. So when you burn this, you destroy that value. At the same time, burning these heavy hydrocarbons increases a lot of volatile organic compound emissions. Those are the elements that impact the air you breathe, and based on that are highly regulated, independent of any of carbon credits, which are changing over time typically. But as this is impacting the air you breathe, that is highly regulated, so we help with that. And last but not least, when you burn this rich gas, you can have detonations in the engines based on the sudden combustion of these heavy hydrocarbons, which leads to higher temperatures, which can lead to shutdowns themselves, or even the detonations shut down the engines. That means you move less gas, and based on that, impact even oil production. So what our system does, it takes this rich gas that's being produced and separates this into a lean fuel gas for the engines that is, in the end, the same quality as the pipeline gas that you get to your house. And the heavy hydrocarbons, they're just being put back into the pipeline and can be then monetized and processed at the next processing facility. And that's a very unique approach, with that improving performance at compressor stations, burning lean gas that's burning cleaner as well, and preserving a value for the customer, which means one of our systems right now is preserving about $1 million a year in heavy hydrocarbons that would otherwise be burned in the engines. And that is a huge benefit for our customers, and at the same time, they can move more gas.
So, Mathias, how do you convert rich gas into lean gas?
So we use a process that's called pressure swing adsorption. And it's using an adsorbent material that is in a vessel. And we move the gas in there at high pressure. And at high pressure, the heavy hydrocarbons are just sticking to the surface of the adsorbent, while the lean gas is just flowing through. And that's based on how we selected the adsorbent. In the second step, we decrease the pressure, and the heavy hydrocarbons are being released again from this adsorbent. So at high pressure, we produce lean gas. At low pressure, we move the heavy hydrocarbons out. And it's a very energy efficient process, which is fully reversible. And that is the beauty of our system, that we develop something that is very energy efficient and is providing the quality of gas our customers desire.
So, in other words, you separate the heavy part with the light part. And what do you do with the heavy part? Are you able to monetize it?
Yes, we are. So at the compressor station, the heavy hydrocarbons that we produce are going back into the inlet side of the compressor station, and based on that are moved through the compressor a second time and being moved to the next processing facility, which is typically a cryogenic plant, where it's a very energy intense process to separate these heavy hydrocarbons into the individual components. is that's where you produce your propane, butane, ethane, and really stream of heavy hydrocarbons into the individual components.
So in a way, you're a mini refinery as well.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Absolutely. The only difference is in the refinery, you have very, very defined output product, while we still have a mix of products so that you need another processing step.
So where do you deliver the byproduct, the heavy part? The lean part, you actually send it through, right? To
The
the
lean
power
part,
stations.
yes, so the lean part we just burn at the compressor stations as fuel for the engines. And when you think about a pipeline system, you have the raw gas coming from a well in the oil field. Then it's going to a gathering station where it's compressed and being put into larger pipelines. And these pipelines are then moving the gas to the cryogenic plants. And so therefore the cryogenic plant might be hundreds of miles away or close by, but all these heavy hydrocarbons are just moved through the system of pipelines until it's being processed. And then you have these products like the propanes, butanes, ethanes, and the natural gas that is moved back into the natural gas pipelines that are then delivering the gas to power stations, to facilities that have power demands, or even to your house where you might have your gas stove or your gas heating. So it's all part of the overall infrastructure.
So do you become a kind of a contractor at a natural gas field, or do you actually buy the gas and process it and gain all the benefits? What kind of financial arrangement do you usually have? Because I know you do have a partnership with a
Mhm.
natural gas compression operator called Archrock, but how does it work?
That's a really good question. In the end, our business model continues to evolve as we are a young company. So Archrock is one of the major natural gas contract companies in the US. So they typically lease compressors to midstreamers or upstreamers to move the gas. And they are our distributor. And currently, they either sell our system to the end customer or lease the system to the end customer. So the end customer is therefore getting all the benefits of the improved compressor station throughput, of the heavy hydrocarbons, and we either get a sales price or a lease from the customer. Is we are not in the business of marketing gas. There are some companies who do that as well, but we started small with, first of all, using a distributor. And at the same time, we're seeing opportunities based on different business needs in the US that eventually we will move to directly selling and directly leasing to customers to build out the service offering within our company as well.
Yeah, so your business model really allows you to focus on your core business. You
Yes.
don't have too many moving parts, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. I mean, but part of that is even, I see ourselves as a technology company. We did the research, we did the product development, and we're doing the commercialization. But based on having Archrock as a distributor, we didn't have a need in this early stage to build out a big service team to support our customers. And with that, continue to focus on the technology development and commercialization. On the other hand, we also don't do any of the fabrication. We use third parties where we procure the components we need and have a fabricator who is doing the final assembly. We have a company that builds all the controls systems for us. And then we have some proprietary elements like the adsorbent that we procure from one company. It's one of our trade secrets, what specifically we use. And so we found a way how to protect our intellectual property by using multiple suppliers and just managing the supply chain without having the need to build our own facilities. So we are a very lean company with right now 13 employees, leveraging partnerships to accelerate this commercialization of our system.
So you mentioned earlier, Matthias, that prior to the 2020s, the company was in a different business, or can you explain a little bit about the history of the company?
Yes. So the history company of the company is also in gas separation, but the initial product offering we had was based on mechanical refrigeration units. Those are more like small cryogenic plants based on using a lot of power to cool down the gas in a compressed state to drop out all these heavy hydrocarbons as liquids. Compared to us, we keep everything in gaseous form. So these pieces of equipment were very energy intense, and they're still used by a lot of companies. But we came to the conclusion that that space became very crowded, and it was not as straightforward to continue to compete without changing business models like what you asked, marketing the heavy hydrocarbons or selling the gas. We didn't want to go into that direction. And then this pressure swing adsorption technology was brought to our attention. And that's where we thought it's time to go into a different direction, develop a new product. And actually, we exited that business to 99% last year based on selling off the remaining fleet that we had. And we still have one active application with a customer, but we expect that this unit will also be most likely be sold to that customer not too far out, as I'm a strong believer in focus. And especially when you develop a new product, to put your energy where you see where your future is, while exiting the business that helped us to support the product development.
Yeah, that's a tough choice, isn't it? To switch,
It
you're in the discomfortable zone. You've been doing it for a long time, and then you change, and that must be a very difficult situation for you.
It's actually the initial decision to move into a slightly different direction was made before I joined ColdStream. But about a year into it, I joined the company in 2022. Looking at where the business was and where we wanted to go, I started to see that the legacy business was more of a distraction. And based on that, working with the board on the alignment, let's discontinue or step out of that business and focus 100% on the new business. And I'm really glad we made that decision, as it created so much more focus and also allowed to optimize the team for the new product and not having to think about what we still need to do for the legacy product line. But it's a decision every business needs to do eventually. And I think that long term is really the difference between companies who continue to evolve and thrive compared to companies who might become irrelevant at one point because they didn't see the need for change and going into different business areas or different business models.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you have 13 employees, and in the past, when you worked for Baker Hughes, you had more than 800 engineers in your R&D
Yes.
team.
Yes, it was a big change for me. I mean, I was at Baker Hughes until 2019 and had a range of teams, whether it was huge engineering teams or leading global product lines. For me, the beauty of small teams is that you can work at a completely different pace. Is a decision you make today is to be implemented tomorrow, if not even on the same day, compared to having to work through a large organization and bringing everybody along, bringing everybody on board. And the second part is I always realized I enjoy when I'm not just focused on one aspect of the business, but when I can really look at every aspect of the business. And having a technical background, I have a PhD in mechanical engineering, and I never really intended to be in oil and gas, but that's a different story. But what I realized that starting with technical knowledge, then accumulating the business understanding, understanding how to commercialize products, how to lead businesses, together with the technical depth I have, helps me to really guide every aspect of the business. And as much as I'm not the technical expert for our system that we have right now, I can always ask the tough questions that might not have been thought about yet, and based on that, driving the progress and looking at the big picture into where could we go with this, what other aspects can we look at to optimize cost, optimize performance, make it fit for purpose for the customer. And that's where I really think I bring a key value to the product development, that I look at it a lot of time more from the customer perspective. And based on that, should we do something, and not can we do something? And with that, asking questions from a customer perspective. And based on that, are we really creating value? Are we driving the right outcomes for a customer? So when the customer is successful, we will be successful.
Well, the oil and gas industry goes through cycles, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the price is really high, but it's because of a political issue, not
Right.
really anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So geopolitics plays a big role in our industry.
Right.
Um, so so you not only have to be a technical person,
Mm-hmm.
you also have to be a business person, but you also have to be a political person.
Yes. It's a really good point. And honestly, it was one part what attracted me to moving from upstream into the midstream and natural gas arena in the US, is the upstream is heavily impacted by the ups and downs of oil demand, oil production. And when you just see how fracking, unconventional shales changed the overall environment and production output in the US. But I always see in Baker Hughes when we had ups and downs, which means either hiring or reducing headcount, shifting direction, where do you focus? But natural gas in the US is, for me, a backbone of the energy infrastructure. Is there are so many power plants that are using natural gas to provide the power we need every single day. When we think about data centers, that infrastructure is typically powered by natural gas. And every big energy consumption you see, it's driven by that. And you can see a lot of stability in the natural gas business based on having a continuously increasing demand to move the gas that is a byproduct of oil production in the US, to move this out of the oil fields to be able to produce the oil. As otherwise, if you cannot move the gas, you would have to flare it. So, and flaring is limited and restricted in a lot of areas. So if you have too much gas that cannot be moved, then you impact oil production, which is driving a lot of stability for the midstream business and ever increasing demand to move the gas from the oil fields to the end users. It's feeding LNG as well, as that is a feedstock to export the gas that is a surplus in the US right now. And you see way more stable price structures in that arena as well. So in the end, it intrigued me to have a more stable environment based on being more part of the core infrastructure, but also being part of making sure that the oil production can continue to go on, and being part of providing affordable energy and reliable energy in the US.
Yeah, and Matthias, the role of gas has really changed over the last 20 years. You mentioned flaring because
Mhm.
gas before was really, I mean, peop companies drilled for oil, not for gas.
Yes,
But
yes,
but today that's not the story. The story today is that natural gas is the transition fuel. And a lot
yes,
of companies like Shell and Total Energies are putting a lot of money on natural gas. I mean, this is something that they see is going to bring us to the, how would you say it? The net zero. We can't get to net
yes.
zero without a transition fuel, and natural gas is the transition fuel.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I mean, natural gas, it's a very clean burning fuel. Is in the end, you convert methane into CO2 and water. And I mean, that's the lowest impact you can have on the environment. And therefore, it's really about what is the fuel that gets us with the lowest emissions and with the highest efficiency to the point where additional new energy sources have been implemented. And I mean, when you look at energy transition, for me, the interesting part is that so far, none of the energy or none of the fuels that have been used historically really went away. It just means the mix of energy continues to change. And natural gas has just a very large proportion of the energy or providing the energy supply at this point of time. And I just see it continue to grow. And oil might not grow as fast at one point of time, but I think so far every projection has been wrong in regards of when we reach peak oil or any of these buzzwords. Is demand continues to go up, which we just see with data centers, the AI-driven power demand. It is just an enormous effort right now to meet those energy demands, and natural gas is a very applicable fuel for that. And I'm glad I'm part of that infrastructure.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, I mean, when the company shifted to this business, did you see the growth coming, or I mean, you were just lucky?
So I would say the data center growth where we think we have a role was not really in the purview. Is we really started thinking about compressor stations, compression business. That drove the partnership with Archrock as well to make sure we have all the expert insights and access to, or the easy market access and technical expertise behind it. But the more we start to think about how we deployed our system and where data centers are being built, that we can have a role in that. I mean, I just recently saw a company who advertised that they just got $100 million contract to use compressed natural gas as a bridge solution for a data center until a pipeline is being built. So when you think about it, you put all the gas from the pipeline into trailers to move it where it's being used as a fuel. And at the same time, we see the opportunity to build the data centers closer to the rich gas pipelines, not necessarily just where the natural gas pipelines are. And we can do the same what we do for compressor stations. Convert the rich gas into lean fuel gas that can be used to operate the gensets in the data centers. But the heavy hydrocarbons are again being just put back into the pipeline and processed downstream. So, which for sure raised the question, why is lean gas so important for power generation? I mentioned before, when you burn rich gas, you have a lot of downtime. You have, again, your kind of detonations that lead to shutdown of the engines. And the data center is all about reliability, or every microgrid is all about reliability. And reliability starts with having the best possible fuel. And if you don't have access to natural gas pipeline, but you have a rich gas pipeline, we can be part of the solution to provide still best possible fuel to the data centers. And with that, really thinking about the approach of bringing data centers microgrids to the gas instead of just trying to bring the gas to the microgrids. So it's really rethinking how you set up the infrastructure. Is a step down from microgrids frac operations in the US, which are moving a lot of times to using also natural gas fired engines or gas turbines to provide electricity for the frac pumps. And you're in the middle of an oil field where you have access to a lot of rich gas, but you don't have the processed gas. Again, that's where we can be part of the solution to convert the rich gas into lean gas for the power generation, improve uptime, improve efficiency, reduce emissions, and with that, also optimizing upstream operations in the end.
Well, I have a question, Matthias.
Sure.
Now, one of the growth drivers for our industry right now is really data centers because, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's electric vehicles. It's really data centers because when you look at the energy requirements of data center, it's much bigger than electric vehicles. So the thing, though, you primarily operate in the United States. Now, what the locations where the data centers are being built, of course, I mean, we know what the primary markets are, right? The biggest markets are Dallas, primarily Texas. You have North Carolina. You have Virginia. So you're saying you would bring the gas in a trailer because of that. Doesn't that kind of have a negative impact also because the trailers are being driven and using diesel?
No, so actually, maybe I didn't phrase it correctly. So there is a company who is using CNG to move the gas to data centers.
Oh, okay.
My point is, I would rather bring the data center close to where access to gas is and help processing it, getting into the right quality. And that's when you think about, you mentioned data centers in Texas. Depending on where you are in Texas, you have a very well built out infrastructure with natural gas pipelines that have lean gas, but you have huge areas that have primarily access to rich gas at this point of time, where pipelines still need to be built. And that's where we could be the solution to place the data center right next to a rich gas pipeline. We help processing the gas to get the lean gas for the microgrid, and based on that, creating more flexibility. So we're talking actually with one customer right now. They're a producer and they're building a microgrid. And that microgrid is right next to one of their rich gas pipelines. But right now, they're still buying gas from a third-party vendor that has lean gas available 7 miles away to power this microgrid. They would rather use their own gas, which is at lower cost for them, which will reduce the overall energy cost to feed that microgrid. And that's where we are part of the solution to create more flexibility, where you can place the microgrid, the data center, where you're not just restricted to existing natural gas pipelines, but can also go into rich field pipelines. And when you mentioned Virginia, actually, I was just up in West Virginia and talking with a compression company there. They also have rich gas up there, and is
Oh,
also a
okay.
byproduct there. So you have pockets of rich gas everywhere. I mean, the biggest areas are kind of the Permian, the Eagle Ford, up in the Bakken, parts of New Mexico, around the Dallas area, in the Barnett Shale, in Oklahoma, the Scoop Stack. You have rich gas in a big area of the US. And honestly, when I was approached by a customer in West Virginia, I was like, they're not really on our radar screen, because I didn't really see this as a primarily rich gas area, but you have those pockets in there. And so therefore, we continue to identify more and more areas already in the US where the technology is applicable. But we're also getting now inbound traffic from Latin America. Argentina is a key market there, with the shale plays down there. And there is a lot of potential opportunity in the Middle East, Far East as well. There's a lot of rich gas produced around the world. But right now, I mentioned we have 13 team members. So I need to take it one step at a time, conquering the US market and then going with partners into the international market.
Well, the US market is a huge market.
Yes,
It's
it
the
is.
I think the biggest data center market in the world.
Yes, it is. It is. Yes. And so, I mean, I'm really excited about that opportunity. It is right now about getting the first customer to deploy one of our systems in an application like this. Is You can always see in oil and gas that you always need a beachhead. Your first customer who is willing to work with you through seeing that there might be some adjustments to the system needed, some optimization, and who's really willing to work with through this early phase. And that's why I also got very lucky with my first customer we have for our current system for the Mach 4 in the compression business. When I started my discussions with them end of 2023, they were immediately like, this is something that's exciting, something we want to be part of. And they very quickly signed a contract to buy 2 of the systems. And when we deployed the first Mach 4, we had to go through a learning curve. Is we upscaled the technology significantly, and upscaling always has some risk involved. And they worked with us through about a 6-month period to help us identify what we need to change, how we need to change it, and had the patience to work with us through this because they believe in the technology. And for me, that is such a key element of commercializing a new product in the oil and gas business, to have a strong partner to start with who believes in the technology, who is willing to work through some initial up and downs, and has the commitment to work through that based on knowing when this is working as expected, it will create huge value for them.
How competitive is your technology, Matthias, compared with what's out there?
So that's a really good question. There's the technical answer and there's a commercial answer as well. So from a technical perspective, there is actually nothing out there that can provide the same fuel quality in the field that we can. There are JT skids out there, the Joule Thomson skids, which just use a pressure drop to cool down the gas and have liquids falling out. They're not getting close to the fuel quality our customers want and need in several areas. I mentioned the mechanical refrigeration units that we have been in business with. They can also not provide the same fuel quality that we can provide. So purely from what we can deliver to the customer, there's, in our mind, nothing comparable out there. We talk about the commercial side. There's 2 aspects. We are costing more than a JT skid. It's, I would say, 5 to 6, 7 times more expensive, but we provide a positive return of investment for our customers. We had one customer telling us a JT skid, it's doing its job, but it's not making any money. It's just costing the customer money. With our system, it's significantly more expensive, but it's paying for itself in 1 to 3 years, depending on the application. At the same time, one of our customers told us, if you can take out 1 percentage point of our downtime at a compressor station, that's worth $1 million a year for us.
So what is your downtime then? Your typical downtime?
We are right now running at 98% uptime. So it's a
Okay.
very reliable system. It's fully remotely operated and controlled, so we don't need anybody on location. Our pilot installation, I think the longest we went without anybody checking on the system on location was about 3 months. It's a low maintenance system. And that's, again, in a beauty of the design, is we really think about it as drop it and forget it. So install it, we help to run it remotely, and there is no day-to-day maintenance required. There's no consumables. So we overcame a lot of the challenges of existing systems. Is we really started to look at what are the pain points of the operators. And in the end, they want the compressor engines or the engines that run generators just running. And they don't want to have the requirement to maintain systems, operate systems on location. So they don't want any additional distractions. So the more we can make it easy for our operators to deploy us, the better we are off.
What are the limitations of your technology, Matthias?
Limitations right now, I would say we need for starting point, we need access to a pipeline. And it depends on the customer what limitations are perceived. When you think about the midstream business, there are so many different contractual setups. Who gets the value of the gas that's being moved? Who gets the value of the heavy hydrocarbons, for example? So depending on the contract, a midstreamer might want to buy the system but would not get the value of the heavy hydrocarbons. So that's a bit more of a commercial limitation where contractual setups are not making it straightforward for everybody to get the full value. When I think about it more from a technical perspective, right now we have one system size that can run up to about 8,000 horsepower in engines, which is kind of a medium-sized compressor station. So the limitation for us right now is that we still need to develop multiple sizes, and we need to figure out how big we can scale this. We had a customer who asked us, as I mentioned, cryogenic plants to process gas. They asked us, can you build something about 10 times the size you have right now? And to help debottlenecking cryogenic plants. And debottlenecking means pre-processing some of the gas so that the cryogenic plant doesn't have to process as much gas as before and can, based on that, provide more efficiency. And that is something we eventually want to figure out. Can we get to a scale that's 10 times the current size and still making it cost effective and efficient and making it easy to deploy, easy to install? As from a technology perspective, I don't see any real limitations to deploy it at compressor stations, to deploy it at microgrids, for example, is we demonstrated the reliability so far, the consistency of performance. So the key is, can we make it always cost effective and efficient for the customer, independent of the size? It's typically
Oh,
also when you go smaller, typically
yeah.
things become more expensive in comparison.
Yeah, you lose economies of scale. But the question, though, is like, I mean, talking about, for example, this is a different operation, obviously, but in Qatar, they have multiple trains. They usually don't just build one big train,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, there's a reason for that. But
Yes.
the modularity is kind of nice because it protects you if anything goes wrong, right?
Yes.
So,
And I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
so what is the typical size of your installation at this point?
So the current skid is 40 feet by 11 feet. So it can easily be transported on a flatbed trailer to location, which is very fit for purpose for a compressor station. So one of our skids is comparable in size to one larger compressor. And as you mentioned, modularity, at a larger station, we can easily just install two systems, which can run in parallel, which means you have also some backup, meaning if one system should be down for maintenance, you have the second system still operating and providing some lean gas to the station. So in the end, it's easy to deploy and operate, and it's a modular system that's meant to be able to be moved with changes in demands at a compressor station.
So for one of those, how much power can you produce from one 40-foot, do you call it trailer or skid?
It's a skid. It's a skid. So one 40-foot skid, as I mentioned before, supports up to about 8,000 horsepower, which is about, what is it, 10 megawatts, to bring it into those terms. And when you think about a compressor station, a lot of those engines are about 2,500 horsepower each. So that means 3 big compressors can be fueled with one of our system.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just did a story on the Jenbacher gas engine
Mhm.
and I think their biggest size is something like 8,000. You mentioned one thing, Matthias, which is interesting for our viewers, which is fuel quality. How do you measure fuel quality of your lean gas? And then so what is good versus not good?
Yes. So that kind of two measures that we typically look at. One is the BTU content of the gas, and which typically field gas can be up to 1300 BTU, 1500 BTU, which is a really rich gas. When you think about a natural gas pipeline, that is more the range of 1000 BTU and 1000 to 1100 BTU. And we get again the gas that comes in at the 1300 BTU down to 1050, 1070. And that is typically a range where engines don't need to be run at reduced power output to run reliable, and where you don't have any of what I mentioned, detonations or any other negative effects. So the BTU number is one measure that's being used in the industry. Is in the compression business, they use a lot of Caterpillar engines, and Caterpillar has a measure that's called the methane number, which in the end is indicating how much methane is in your gas compared to other components. And a typical target is to be at a methane number of 70 or higher to have absolutely reliable engine performance. Other systems typically get the methane number up to maybe 30 to 60, somewhere in that range, which means not a really good fuel quality. We can get it up to 70 to 80 from a methane number. So again, getting into the range where engine operators really want to see the quality. So that's why we talk about, we deliver pipeline quality gas to fuel the engines. And that is in the end what our customers are after.
So basically, when you have better quality fuel, the engines can produce more power.
They can produce more power and have less shutdowns. Yes, those are the key impacts. So more consistent power and less downtime based on engine shutdowns. Yes.
So is that the same way that your customers measure if your technology works for them?
Yes, absolutely. So one of our customers shared data with us with how they run a JT skid right now and what downtime they have during the year based on rich fuel, hot temperatures. And just based on fuel quality, they have 3 to 4% downtime each year. And 1% downtime is $1 million to them in value. Based on the fuel quality we can deliver, we and the customer believe that we can reduce this downtime to about 1%, and based on that, creating significant value to the customer. And that system is actually being shipped this Thursday to a location, and should be up and running hopefully in the mid-September timeframe to get the final feedback from the customer if we manage to deliver to those improvements. But actually, last week we had a great data point at a compressor station where we run right now. That gas, the field gas that was feeding our system in the compressor station, went from 1200 BTU, which is already rich gas, to about 1500 BTU, which is really rich gas in a short period of time. We continue to deliver fuel gas to the engines below 1100 BTU. The engines didn't shut down, and we were told typically the engines would have shut down if that rich fuel gas would have been burned in the engines. So that customer really told us, you know what, under these changing conditions, usually the compressor station would not continue to run. They would have downtime, and the engines just ran without any hiccup, without any downtime through that peak in rich gas. And for me, those are all proof points where we can clearly demonstrate we can manage the fuel quality for customers under very fluctuating conditions.
Is fuel quality the main reason for downtime across the industry, or is it something
It's
else?
fuel quality is a big contributor for sure. When you think about the compression business, I mean, downtime is also created based on just liquid slugs. Instead of just gas coming to the pipeline, liquids dropping out, and based on that, shutting the compressor itself and not the engine. but fuel quality for sure is a big contributor to the downtime. And what we realized, even from a commercialization perspective, originally we focused a lot of the NGL value or the heavy hydrocarbon value our customers can extract, is that's how they make money with the system. But the reason they buy is because they have problems with their fuel. They need to improve fuel quality. They need to improve throughput. So the pain point we address is engine downtime. The value we create on top of that, measurable, is the heavy hydrocarbons going back into the pipeline. So, which is always an interesting part to look at. What is the ultimate driver for a customer to make a buying decision? And the more you're solving a real problem compared to being a nice to have additional value, the more you get on the critical path and the more interest of the customers you get.
So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, if I didn't hear you right, the commercial value of the rich gas is more than the lean gas, and so you said they make more money from
Yes.
the rich hydrocarbons that they take out.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. So when you burn lean fuel, you mainly burn methane, right? And when you look at the cost of methane in the US, at times it's negative because there's an abundance. So with helping the customers burn methane, we help them burn what has the least value, but what also burns the cleanest based on reducing emissions with that. But the real value in the natural gas is in the heavy hydrocarbons. And that value continues to stay high throughout the years. And that's what we preserve for the customer. Instead of burning those heavy hydrocarbons, they get to monetize them at the next cryo plant.
So that means practically that when you have gas, you recover almost 100% of its value because you get the lean and you get the rich.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's an amazing value proposition. It's just what I mentioned before. Some midstreamers, when they would deploy this system at their compressor station, based on the midstream contract they have, that heavy hydrocarbon value would go to the producer and not to the midstreamer. So they would have the expense to buy the system or lease the system, and some of the value would go to a third party. And that's where we are starting to work with a couple of customers who have a midstream and upstream arm. They can figure out internally how to make this work from the economics. But it's interesting that even a company who has an upstream and a midstream business, they have contracts between each other, who is getting what value of the natural gas. And even they have to figure out how to move the money on paper between the entities to have the right business case. So it's more, it's an artifact of how the system is set up or how the contracts are set up. The value is always there, but it's not fully aligned with who has expenses, who gets the value. And that's one part we are trying to overcome right now based on really picking the customers who get the full value first. And based on that, it's kind of changing industry behavior to some extent.
That's that's a very different business model from the oil industry, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah.
More complicated.
Yeah. So the midstream is a very complicated business. Even one customer or one midstreamer might just have, based on the operating area, completely different contract setups. So our first customer, they told us in Texas and Oklahoma, they get as a midstreamer the full value of the heavy hydrocarbons. They have assets up in North Dakota in the Bakken. They would get none of the heavy hydrocarbon value. So that's why we started with them in Texas and in Oklahoma with the first installations, to demonstrate the full value and help them understand how they can make the case in North Dakota with the producer to make it work. So it's commercial constructs that are a little bit of barrier to entry to get to the full value as quickly as we would like to. But it would be easy, everybody could do it, right?
So when you're selling your technology,
Mhm.
you also have to figure out how they're going to make money.
We need to help them figure that out. Yes, yes. And so that's kind of the interesting part. As I mentioned, the JT skits that are used to just provide some solution compared to our system, it's a very different price range. And based on that JT skit, nobody's even asking questions if somebody's deploying that because it's just business as usual. But with our system, it's a different level of reviews and approvals. And that's where we do a lot of education of our customers and really work with them through a value prop calculator where we go through what are their system setups, what values do they get, what volumes do they move to help them get to a dollar amount to justify the system purchase. And some customers just get it straight away and they see where the value is. Some need a bit more convincing, but I think we're on the right track to unlock that.
Yeah, and I guess it really depends, Matthias, on what kind of existing contracts they have,
Yes,
because it's
exactly.
not
Yeah.
it's not easy to get out of a contract, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, those contracts, they're in place for 10, 20 years and nobody wants to touch them. And so, and on top of that, right now, you have still so much consolidation going on in the business where one midstreamer is buying the next midstreamer or upstream companies merging. And that means all of a sudden they deal with multiple historical contract setups, which is making it more complex on the one side, but it's an opportunity for us as well. Is they continue to want to harmonize and be more consistent in their contract setups. And so therefore there's some more openness to touch some of the contracts that are not aligned with what their typical desired setup is.
Yeah, I think the bottom line that I see across the board in all industries is people are trying to get efficiencies.
Yes,
Whatever asset they own, they just
yes,
want the money to work harder for them.
yes. And honestly, that's what I think is, as much as we see some of these contractual challenges right now, I think this technology makes enough of a difference. And that's where we also promote the industry-wide benefit that we can provide to have people think about how we can overcome the contractual challenges. Is our quick estimate is that it's about $500 million in heavy hydrocarbons per year that are burned in compressor stations.
How much impact does the environmental aspect play in decisions among your customers? I mean, when you're saying your technology, the Mach 4, can reduce VOC emissions by 70% and
Yes,
reduce CO by 20%. How does that compare with the other technologies? And is that a key factor when they're making up their minds, or not as much?
it it is a significant factor. Is the level of VOC emissions determines what oversight you have, what permit level you're in, how much more compression capacity you might be able to install at a location without exceeding emission limits. And we have several customers who approach us to start with, we have an emission problem and we see you can solve this for us. And the nice part is we can help solving the emission problem while making money for the customer. And for me, those are the real valuable technologies when you think about emissions. Emissions control should not necessarily drive up your cost. It should hopefully drive additional value. And that's what we can do. And so therefore, it is a key decision driver in addition with we can provide additional value that comes out of that.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Matthias. I learned so much from
Absolutely.
you today. Uh,
Good.
I
I
mean,
appreciate your great questions.
I wish I got into midstream 30 years
Yeah.
ago. But honestly, that time, I mean, natural gas wasn't as exciting as it is today. So,
Yeah.
you know,
No,
it's I think it's people like you, the technologies that you have that make it more interesting.
yeah.
You know, being innovative.
Yeah, it's a great market to be in, and there's so many more problems to be solved, and it's great to be part of the journey.
Yeah, and I think next time we'll talk about more problems.
Yeah, sounds good. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for your time, and it's been great and very interesting conversation.
Yeah. And thank you, Vicky, for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.